The last song we sang this morning was Firm Foundation. And one of the slides, the kind of end of the verse, it says, I put my faith in Jesus because he's never let me down. My question is, have you ever felt let down by God? Yeah. Have you ever felt that I know the words that are saying here, but I don't know how to sing them with integrity because I feel let down by God. I feel frustrated with God. I feel disappointed with God. Have you ever asked the questions, all right, God, where are you? Like I've been praying and asking and praying and asking and praying and asking, and nothing has changed. I don't hear you. I don't see you. I don't feel your presence. And anyone else other than me? Come on, there we go. Let's go. Yeah. Have you ever seen what God's done and followed his will only to walk right into the middle of chaos? And then just be like, God, I know what you told me to do, but I don't think it's right. I don't think it's good. I don't like it. It can't be the best way. Habakkuk is this story, right, of questioning, of doubting, of wondering, and yet still coming to a place of trust and worship. I had a friend who was one of my former coaches at a gym, and we got coffee one day, and she said, Corey, I want to trust Jesus, but I can't. And I was like, why? She said, when I was little, I was repeatedly abused by someone in my family, and I prayed and prayed and prayed for God to make him stop, and he didn't. If God wasn't there for me then when I needed him most, why would I trust him now? And I was like, what do you say? I didn't even know how, I still don't even know that I have a great answer for that. When you're holding in one hand this God who's love and powerful and good, and in the simultaneous other hand, this injustice and abuse that you're like, he can do something about, but that doesn't make sense. Right? Anyone ever felt that tension where you're like, I don't even know how to formulate the thoughts and words that I'm feeling right now. This just doesn't make sense together. I remember, man, the biggest time for me in this was February of 2019. We started the church September of 2018. So that's 6 months, something like that. And I had to take emergency month of January off, stood up in front of our church February 2019, and I said, I don't know what I believe about God anymore. Like everything in my world had just kind of started to crumble, and the ground beneath my feet that used to be solid and made sense was now breaking away. And I didn't know which way was up or down or left or right. I certainly didn't know what to do with Psalm 46. I hated that psalm at the time that says, the Lord is my refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. And I was like, time out, because it's right now, and I'm not seeing any help. That's an easy psalm to stick on a coffee mug and just smile and take a selfie of, right, and put on your Instagram when the ground is solid beneath your feet and when the walls of your world are safe and secure. But when they start to crumble and you take a step and there's no ground beneath you, that's a different psalm. That he is a very present help in time of trouble. And I stood up and I was like, guys, I don't know what to do right now. My little experiences, y'all know that. We've all had times where we're like, God, what the heck are you doing? Where are you? I need your help. You tell me, Jesus, to ask and seek and knock, and you will answer. I've been knocking, dude. I've been asking. I'm not getting anything back. And when you do, right? That is the reality of human life, yes? It's not something we can avoid. We can't just shove it down and sweep it under the rug and just be like, just ignore that pile that's growing under the rug like it's not there. No, it's there. We can walk in and smile and say, it's good, life's fine, everything's great. But underneath, man, there's chaos. How do we live in the reality of humanity and yet still rejoice in and celebrate our God? That's what Habakkuk did. That's where Habakkuk was when destruction and devastation was upon him, and he had his frustration and his complaints and his doubts. Still, he ended with, "Yet I will rejoice in the God of my salvation." How do we do that? Because what we know as human beings is sometimes life is going to suck. And sometimes we're going to wake up on a Tuesday and everything's going to be great, and then we're going to get punched in the face. And everybody's got a plan, right? So Mike said, till you get punched in the face. And then you're backtracking and you're trying to figure out, where did that come from? What's my next step? How do I do this? That's life. How do we, when that happens, because it is coming for us, if it hasn't already, and if it has, it's probably going to come again. How do we still rejoice in the God of our salvation? Because we got to deal with it. But man, I want to know how to rejoice in it. I want to know how to still have joy and celebration when life is hard and when the storms of life are beating away at me. How do we rejoice? It's okay to feel that way. Right? If nobody's ever given you permission for, one of my favorite verses is in Matthew 28, right? After Jesus has risen from the dead, Jesus is alive, risen from the dead, and he's on the mountain and all of his disciples are there, and it says, and they worshiped him, right? They worshiped Jesus, the risen Savior, but some doubted. What a calming reality to my soul, because sometimes I'm like, I'm doubting right now, and the Bible's like, hey, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay for us to settle there and stay there. Right? What an insult to our God to just settle there. No, it's okay. He can meet us there. He understands. We're human. He gets it. The Bible gives us multiple references. Psalm 13, man, the Psalms, if you're like, I don't know, I kind of feel like a psychopath. Read the Psalms, man. David was all over the place, dude. One moment he's like, my Lord, my soul pants for you. And the next minute he's like, God, where are you, you scoundrel? Psalm 13:1, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Anyone ever felt that way? Like God's hiding from you? You're looking, you're like, come on, God, I want you. And it's just like crickets, nothing. This is the man after God's own heart, David. How long will you hide your face from me? Paul in 2 Corinthians 1, he wrote that they were so overwhelmed and beat down, they despaired of life itself. The way I read that is like, this is my interpretation. He just wanted to go to sleep and not wake up. Like life was just such a beating. He just wanted it to be over and done. And we got Habakkuk, who's going to question, and right out of the gate, right? Verse 2, how long, Lord, must I call for help, and you do not listen? And yet, this 6-verse psalm in Psalm 13, this is how David ends. He first questions, how long, O Lord? But he ends it here. Yet I will trust in your faithful love. My heart will rejoice in your deliverance. Within the same 6-verse psalm, he goes from, God, what the heck are you doing? How long are you going to hide your face from me? Yet I will rejoice in your deliverance. Paul, I think it's 2 verses later, he's like, I despaired of life itself, yet he says, yet my hope is in God. He has delivered us and he will deliver us again. My hope is in him. Habakkuk, he's going to end this questioning of what God's doing and where his goodness is. He's going to end it by saying, yet I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. So look at me. We all know suffering and hurt and pain and disappointment and doubt and frustrations, yes? Don't we want to be able to also say, yet still I rejoice? Right? Like we're not going to avoid heartache. Jesus said, in this world you will face tribulation. It's coming for us. Don't we also want to end our psalm of hurt and disappointment and complaint with, yet still I rejoice in the God of my deliverance? I celebrate the God of my salvation. That's Habakkuk. How did he get there? How did that happen? because that's what I want. I want to know how to do this. The title of this sermon, I'm getting pretty consistent with sermon titles nowadays. I feel like that's a check mark in my 2026. The title of the sermon is Yet Still I Rejoice. Yet Still I Rejoice. Habakkuk is largely classified as a lament. A lament is a prayer of complaint or sorrow or frustration to God. Not about God behind his back, not over there. It is taking our prayers of frustration and sorrow and doubt and confusion and complaint and taking it to God. Right? It's coming to him. 1 Peter 5, God says, come and cast your anxieties on me because I care for you, right? Lament is taking the hard parts of this life that we are going to go through, and it's coming to him. And then listen, this is critical. It's waiting on him to bring resolution. Right, in 2019, man, when my world was spinning, the only thing I remember for certain God told me was don't quit. He didn't tell me to read my Bible more or pray more or like roll up my sleeves and work my way out of this. He just said, hey, don't give up on me. Because what he's telling me was, I will bring you through. I am a refuge. I am that's who he is. And so to lament is to take those pains of life, those heartaches of life, and it's to bring them to God. There's something beautiful in that. There's growth in that. If you're a parent here, you know this, or if you don't have kids, right? Your parents you want your kids to come and bring their problems to you. It's when they're quiet and not talking to you, you're like, something's not right here. No, as a parent, you're like, come on, let's talk this out together. There's beauty and growth there. We don't think our God is even a better parent than us. He knows that we're having a heartache. He knows that we have doubts. He knows that we're frustrated. He knows that we're hurt. He wants us to bring them to him and to wait with him to bring resolution. That's what lament is. That's what Habakkuk is. So the first two chapters are Habakkuk's lament and God's response. Right? Habakkuk calls out. He complains to God. God gives an answer. Habakkuk doesn't like God's answer. And so he fires back. I don't agree with that. God gives another answer, and then chapter 3 is Habakkuk's resolution. The resolution to rejoice and celebrate in God. And so let's see how Habakkuk laments. Let's see how Habakkuk finds joy even in suffering, so that you and I can find joy even when life hurts and it's hard. And even when we have doubts and confusions and frustrations with God. So it starts, Habakkuk 1, right out of the gate. Verse 2, how long, Lord, must I call for help, and you do not listen? Or cry out to you about violence, and you do not save? Do you ever feel like, I can't say this to God? Like that would be wrong of me? But he already knows it. Come on, let's just talk. It's like a counseling session we get to have with God. Right, let's talk this out with him. How long are you going to do this, God? Why do you force me to look at injustice? But Habakkuk's blaming God for the injustice around him. He's throwing his complaints. He's filing his complaints to God. Hey, it's you. You're making me look at injustice. Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Oppression and violence are right in front of me. Strife is ongoing and conflict escalates. This is why the law is ineffective and justice never emerges, for the wicked restrict the righteous. Therefore, justice comes out perverted. God, where are you? Like, how long do I need to pray and ask for the same thing and you give me no answer? God, this is a good prayer. Justice. Why are you not doing anything with that? Why are you not responding? You ever prayed something and you're like, I know this is good. Doesn't he give good gifts to his children who ask, what's going on here? I love this prayer because, this is us. This is our prayers. God, I'm asking for a job so I can pay my bills. Why will you not give me a job? Why will you not open up this door? God, I'm praying for community and friends so that I have people to walk in this journey with. Why do you leave me alone? Why are you not giving me friends? God, I'm praying for a spouse and a family to teach and to grow together. Why are you not blessing me with that? Why are you silent, God? I'm praying for this depression and this mental anguish to go away. God, I see that you're able to do this, right? You've done it over and over. Why not here? Why not now? What are you doing? Right? This is our prayers, right? We can relate with Habakkuk. Perhaps a different circumstance, same prayer. Where are you, God? What are you doing? Why are you silent? Why are you not responding? But God does respond. Verse 5 says, look at the nations and observe. Be utterly astounded, for I am doing something in your days that you will not believe when you hear about it. Look, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter, impetuous nation that marches across the earth's open spaces to seize territories not its own. They are fierce and terrifying. Their views of justice and sovereignty stem from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards and more fierce than wolves of the night. Their horsemen charge ahead. Their horsemen come from distant lands. They fly like eagles, swooping to devour. All of them come to do violence. Their faces are set in determination, right? But Isaiah's looking at his people, and there's injustice among the leaders. Or the powerful and the leaders in Israel are taking advantage of the weak and the poor, and there's violence and oppression, and Habakkuk's like, God, do something here. Like, don't just let the wicked get away. Why are you not answering? I'm praying for justice, God. And God responds and he says, oh, I am doing something. I'm sending the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. Right? Historically, in this time, the Babylonians were moving across the Middle East, devouring any people that stood in their way. Complete annihilation and destruction. And so Habakkuk's like, God, do something about the wickedness in my hometown in Jerusalem. Answer me, provide, come through. And God's like, oh, I am coming through. It's with the Babylonians who will be my hammer of justice. The Babylonians will come in and they will remove those who are in the powerful spots. They will learn very quickly that they are not the biggest and the strongest. Which then raises Habakkuk's next lament. It says in chapter 1, verse 12, are you not from eternity, Lord my God, my Holy One? You will not die. Lord, you appointed them to execute judgment, my rock. You destined them to punish us. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil, and you cannot tolerate wrongdoing, right? So freeze there for just a second. Habakkuk's like, okay, God, I know who you are. You are the holy, sovereign God. You get to call the shots. You determine the paths. You get to say who does what and how, and you're holy and pure, and you cannot look on evil or tolerate wrongdoing, right? This is who you are, God. So why do you tolerate those who are treacherous? Why are you silent while one who is wicked swallows up one who is more righteous than himself? He's like, God, answer me, do something about the injustice. And God says, I am doing something about the injustice. I'm bringing Babylon in to destroy Jerusalem. That's not what I meant, God. Surely you who are holy and pure and good are not going to remove one wickedness with a greater wickedness. Right? Like, surely your plan is not to bring justice by a greater injustice. Right? Like, surely, God, this is not, you misheard my prayer. This cannot be your answer. How can you, the holy and good and eternal God who sees everything? So Habakkuk's lament shifted from, God, why don't you answer me? What are you doing? Where are you? To, oh, I don't like what you're doing. That can't be a good plan. I prayed for a new job to provide for my family, but this my boss is a tyrant. Like, surely that can't be, like, surely that was not it. I prayed for a spouse, someone to do life with, but now my spouse is hurting me in ways no one in this world has ever hurt me before. Surely that's not right, God. I prayed and I asked for children, but now I've miscarried for the third time. Like, surely that's not right, God. I don't think what you're doing is good. Anyone ever had prayers like that? Where it's like, okay, God, I see what you called me to. This was my prayer when we planted the church. You call us to plant a church, and we get here and all hell breaks loose. Like, people would ask me for the first few years, like, how's church planting? I'm like, oh, it's good. And inside I'm thinking it's miserable. Like, I don't ever want to do it again. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. It's better now. It's a tough run for a bit. It's a tough run. But I'm like, you ever thought about the disciples? There's a couple times where they find themselves in a storm, and Jesus has to show up and like flex his Jesus muscles. But you ever thought about how they got into the storm? It's because Jesus told them to get in a boat and sail across the sea. So they're like, hey, we are going to obey you, Jesus, wherever you send us into a storm? Like, wait, that's not how this is supposed to go. We were doing what you told us to do. And now, right, you ever thought, like, I'm being obedient and everything sucks? That can't be right. This can't be God's plan. So this is Habakkuk's second lament. And then he says in verse 1 of chapter 2, and this is critical to lamenting. He says, okay, God, here's my frustration. I don't like your plan. Can't be right. Chapter 2, verse 1, I will stand at my guard post and station myself on the lookout tower. I will watch to see what he will say to me and what I should reply about my complaint. He voices his lament and his frustration. And Habakkuk does what oftentimes we don't do. He stays and he waits and he looks to God. Right? So often for me, like, I want to take my complaints and I want to throw them at God, and then I want to turn my back and like storm off and pout off, right? The key to finding healing in lament is waiting on God. It's continuing to lean into him. It's not giving up on him. Stay the course with him. Let him work it out with you. Right? Anyone ever been to counseling? You're not going to get far with one session. It takes some time. It takes some repetition. It takes sticking it out, right? And so often we want to have questions with God and voice our complaints, and then we want to go and, like, I don't know, Google some answer or read a book, or to be like, I don't know, I'm going to watch TV and that. Like, no, we got to stick it out and wait. And so Habakkuk waits. He throws his laments back out to God, his questions, his doubts, and then God answers in verse 2 of chapter 2. It says, write down this vision, clearly inscribe it on tablets so one can easily read it. He says, the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hasn't happened yet. It's still coming. It testifies about the end, and it will not lie. Though it delays, wait for it, since it will certainly come and not be late. Right? He's saying that the Babylonians are coming, but they're coming. They're not here. Right? You're asking for help. You're asking for an answer. My answer is the Babylonians, but they're still coming. They're on their way. It's going to happen. And then Habakkuk's like, that doesn't seem right. Like, how are you going to let the wicked just get away with everything? He says, verse 4, no. Look, his ego is inflated. He is without integrity, but the righteous one will live by his faith. Moreover, wine betrays. An arrogant man is never at rest. He enlarges his appetite like Sheol, and like death, he is never satisfied. He gathers all the nations to himself. He collects all the peoples for himself. God says, their pride will be their downfall. Like, yes, I'm letting them come in and I'm going to use them, but they're not going to get away with it. Their ego will also bring them down. They will have justice come to them as well. And then the rest of chapter 2 is 5 different woes, right? Messages of destruction and why destruction is coming upon the Babylonians. And he says, woe number 1, he says, to the one who amasses what is not his, one day those you took from will turn on you. So the Babylonians who are coming in and taking from others, one day the others will eventually return back on him. Woe number 2, to the one who dishonestly makes wealth, shame will befall you. Woe number 3, to the one who builds a city on bloodshed, the Lord of armies will tear you down. Woe, number 4, to the one who takes advantage of his neighbor sexually. Shame will catch up with you. Woe, number 5, to the one who worships a carved idol made from human hands. You will find no response or answer there. And so God is just saying the pride and the ego of Babylon will be their downfall. And then he lists those 5 reasons that Babylon is prideful and arrogant and the destruction that will come from it. So his point to Habakkuk is, yes, I know you're looking at this and you're like, this doesn't make sense, but don't worry, I've got my eye on that as well. I will bring justice to the unjust. And so to recap, Habakkuk's like, God, why aren't you answering me? Do something. And God says, I am. I'm sending the Babylonians. And Habakkuk's like, I don't like that answer. That doesn't seem good. And God's like, no, I am good. I will bring justice there as well. Just give it time. And now we get to chapter 3, which is the climax, the resolution of Habakkuk, where it says, right, we'll go to the conclusion and kind of work backwards. He says in verse 18, yet I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. So the conclusion of Habakkuk's lamenting is that he will celebrate and rejoice in God. But listen, he gets to that conclusion before any of his circumstances have changed. His first complaint, God, you're not doing anything about the injustice among us. It hasn't changed. God's answered the Babylonians, and God's like, oh, they're not here yet. They're coming later. So not only has his immediate circumstances not changed, when he's looking down the road, he's like, oh, shoot, it's going to get worse. And yet, still, he rejoices. Right? He says in verse 16, when he's looking at the immediate circumstance and he's looking down the road to the Chaldeans coming and what God says he's going to do, he says in verse 16, I heard and I trembled within. My lips quivered at the sound. Rottenness entered my bones. I trembled where I stood. Now I must quietly wait for the day of distress to come against the people invading us. Let me ask you a question. If you read just Habakkuk 3, verse 16, would you be like, oh, that guy's having a good day? Like he's feeling real good about life. Like he's happy and chipper and just loving everything, right? No. He's trembling within. He's quivering. His knees are shaking. He sees destruction and devastation on his doorstep, breathing down his neck, surrounding him like an army. But his conclusion, though the fig tree does not bud and there is no fruit on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though the flocks disappear from the pen and there are no herds in the stalls, though I call out and I don't hear a response, and when you give a response, I don't like it, even then, yet still I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. This is how David can write Psalm 13 and say, God, why aren't you answering me? Yet still I rejoice in your deliverance. This is how Paul can say, I despair of life itself, yet still I hope in the God who will deliver again. Is this not the men and women we want to be? We know that the Chaldeans are coming for us. We know that suffering and hurt and hardship is coming. We know that we're going to call out to God at sometimes and not hear him. We know these things. Don't we want to be a people that still we rejoice in the God of our salvation? So how did Habakkuk get there? This is where if you're like, give me my steps, give me my application points. 1, we must look to who God is. 2, we must remember what he has done. And then we must choose to trust and rejoice in him, regardless of what the circumstances are around us. So in verse 2 of chapter 3, he says, Lord, I have heard the report about you. I stand in awe of your deeds. He's first remembering the report about who God is. This is who you are. I'm looking at all these things around me, and I'm looking at the chaos of the Chaldeans, and I'm looking at these doubts and confusions, and yet this is who you are. If we are going to rejoice through the hardship and through the suffering, we must intentionally take our eyes off the circumstances around us and look above them to who God is. We will never rejoice through the hard parts of life if all we're doing is looking at the hard parts of life. At some point, we have to look above them to who God is, regardless of what's happening around us. And that's where Habakkuk starts. He says, this is who you are. And he did that some already in chapter 1, verses 12 and 13, right? He says, you're from eternity, Lord, my God. My Holy One, you will not die. He's like, God, you're sovereign. You're in control. You are God. You get to call the shots. I'm not in control here. I can be frustrated and confused, but I'm not God. Right? And that helps us realize that we're not in charge of it all, right? Like, when was the last time you spoke a universe into existence? Or when was the last time you breathed life into a human being and formed them out of the dust? Right? Yes, we're looking at the chaos around us, but we have to look above us and say, okay, God, you are still God. You are the holy sovereign one. He says you're holy and you're pure. You cannot tolerate evil. And so even when we're looking at evil around us and it seems like those who are doing wrong are advancing and moving forward, we have to remember God does not tolerate evil. And so somewhere in this, there must be something good. I can't see it and I don't know what's going on, but this is who God is. He's holy and pure. So this isn't pure. So God must be doing something different. Right? And he says, you're my rock, my salvation, right? We have to remember that even when the world is chaotic, God is not, he's not thrown off his throne. Right? He's in control. He's not surprised and taken off guard. We need to remember Isaiah 55. Like, these are some huge verses for me to recount when I'm like, I don't know what's going on. We got to remember, okay, God's thoughts and his ways are not our thoughts and our ways. Right? If you're a parent or if you've ever served with kids ministry, is it possible that an 8-year-old doesn't have the full perspective like you do? As smart as your teenager thinks they are, is it possible that you might be a little wiser than them, right? Okay, so if there's a knowledge gap between us and other humans, how big must that knowledge gap be between God and us? We must remember, okay, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm not as big as God. There's probably ways and thoughts that I can't wrap my head around that perhaps he sees, right? If we're traveling down 35 together in a caravan and we've got walkie-talkies going, we're like, how's it looking for you? Everything's great, man. Green lights, no traffic on 35, nothing at all. The construction cleared up. It's perfect, right? And everything is good. But we got someone on top of, I don't know, one of those big buildings downtown, and they're looking like south a little bit further, and they're like, hey, FYI, like, it's going to back up here. You need to exit here. And you're like, what are you talking about, man? Everything's clear, right? Is it possible that someone who's higher than us sees things a little further than us? And can even tell us, I know everything seems good here, but watch out there. Or what if they're like, hey, take this exit. You take that exit and it's backed up. And they're like, no, but don't worry. It's actually going to clear up this way. We've got to remember that even when we're looking around here, God's his thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. We've got to remember what David remembered in Psalm 25, that God is good and just and upright. Is it possible that there can be a good plan that requires suffering first? Right? Is it possible that we can take our 8-month-old into the doctor's office for vaccines, and in their mind, they're like, why the heck are you allowing someone to torture me? But in your mind, you're like, you need this vaccine in order to be healthy for the long run. Right? Is it possible that our God can see something good that requires some hardship to get to? So we got to remember that when the things around us don't make sense and they're hard. Okay, God, his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts, and he is a good God. We've got to remind ourselves of who he is. Otherwise, the circumstances of life will overrun us. And so Habakkuk is doing that, and we do that sometimes together. Right? We do that here. Right? In Deuteronomy 31, God told Moses to write a song and then instruct the church to sing it together so that they can build one another up in the truth of who God is. Right? This thing right here, this isn't like an idea that we came up with. This has been instructed from God from the very beginning that we need one another to help us remember what is true. You know, when you leave here and you spend Monday through Saturday, just think about the different voices and inputs you have coming to you. People you work with, neighbors, social media, YouTube, books that you read, TV shows that you watch. Are you thinking about some of that? Ballpark it. What percentage of all those inputs are telling you the truth about who God is? My guess is it's pretty low. My guess is most of the people around us, most of the media inputs, most of the shows we watch, most of the books we read are not telling us the truth of who God is. And so we're putting, 90% of junk in our brains and 10% of truth, and we wonder why we're struggling to believe truth. Because we're wildly lopsided with input that's not true. And so God's like, hey, get around people that are going to speak truth to you. Shocker, it will actually biologically shift the way we think and see the world. And so he tells us in Hebrews 10, he said, don't neglect meeting together. Right? Meet together to build one another up. And I've said this from the get-go, your presence in the church matters. You are not here just to passively consume. You are here to build me up and speak truth to me so that I can endure through the hard parts of life. And I am here to build you up and speak truth to you. And you sit next to people to sing truths because sometimes the person next to you can't sing that God will never let you down. They need to hear your voice singing for them. I remember, I've said this before, shout out Erica, right? In 2019 where I was like, I just don't know that I have, like my faith is weak. And she was like, I'll have faith for you right now. What was that, 7 years now? I still remember that conversation. Because we need one another to speak truth to us and build us up. This is God's like, God doesn't tell us to do this so that he can have he's got like attendance rolls on, in heaven. He's like, haha, look at this. We had 5,000 people in church today on this Sunday. No, it's for our own good. So that we can remember the truth of who he is because the world around us is not telling us what's true. Sometimes we do this on our own. Psalm 1:2 says to meditate on the word night and day. In Mark chapter 1, it says Jesus went off alone to pray. I mean, if Jesus is doing this, who are we to think we wouldn't have to? Right? We've got to go remind ourselves what is true about God. If we're going to rejoice through the suffering, we've got to take our eyes off of the world and put them above. Colossians 3:2 says, set your mind on things above. We've got to see who God is. We've got to remember who he is. And then we have to remember what he has done. Past tense, what he's already accomplished for us. Right? And so Habakkuk, he's like, Lord, I have heard the report about you and remembering who you are, and I stand in awe of your deeds. He's looking back and he's going, God, you have been faithful then. Surely you will be faithful now. And verses 3 through 15 are just recounting the deliverance of God from Egypt and the Exodus and how he overcame Pharaoh and how he overcame the Red Sea and how he caused the sun to stop so that Joshua could win the battle. And he's just looking back and he's like, God, you're so faithful to save. You're so faithful to save. You're so faithful to save, so that he will teach himself, you will be faithful to save now, so that I can rejoice in the God of my salvation. And we get to look back not only at the history story of the Exodus and Joshua, we get to look back to the cross and we get to go, God, you're faithful to save. Surely you'll be faithful now. Right? Paul says in Ephesians 2 that we are to remember that we once were hopeless without God. We had nothing on our own. We were trying to make ourselves righteous on our own. Man, come on, right? There's no chance of that, but God in his kindness has come and saved us through Christ. That Christ has done everything we need to be made right with God, that while we were still sinners, while I was running that way away from God, in love, God sent his son to die for me. Man, you ever had to like forgive someone that really wounded you in a deep way? Right? That's hard enough when someone is repentant and trying to make it right. How do you show love to someone that's still actively harming you and sinning against you? And yet that's how God shows his love. While we were still sinning, Christ died for us. The magnitude of his love, we looked at that and we go, God, you were faithful then. Why would you not be faithful today? You loved me then. Why would you not love me today? Romans 8:32 is one of my favorite verses where it just says, if God has already given us his son, why would he not give us all things today? He's already given us everything we need. He's given us his best. Why is he going to start holding back now? Why is he not going to be for us now? And so listen, hardship is going to come. How are we going to rejoice through it? We're going to look to who God is. Okay, God, you're above these circumstances. These circumstances do not define you. And we're going to look to what he has done. He's already sent his son on our behalf. That's the truth that we look at. And then step 3, you've got to make a choice. Are you going to trust God or not? Are you going to look at who he is? Are you going to look at what he's done? And are you going to give your life to believing him? Or are you going to lean on to what makes sense to you, to the circumstances around you, what you see, what's happening? Habakkuk made a choice. He made a choice to trust God, to trust, verse 19, that the Lord will be his strength, that the Lord will give him the feet of endurance like a deer. At every moment, right, we're making that decision. Okay, do I trust him? Or am I leaning into life my way? We look at who he is, we look at what he's done, and then we got to decide, am I going to trust him or not? And lastly, you got to choose to rejoice. Right? He says, yet I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. And remember, that celebration and rejoice, nothing in his circumstances had changed. And in fact, they were only going to get worse, and he knew it. And yet still he rejoiced, because he was rejoicing not in his circumstances. He was rejoicing in the God who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He was rejoicing in the God who had saved him. He was rejoicing in the God who was his strength. He was rejoicing in the God who's above the storms and beyond the storms and totally around it. We can come in here grieving the weights of life and yet still rejoice, because the God that we rejoice in is the same and true. It's a choice that we make. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. The feelings, they will start to follow. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, but as we continue to look to what is true, remember what he has done, and choose to trust and rejoice in him, the healing, the freedom, the feelings will start to follow. This is how we rejoice in him, even when life is hard and when the weights of life come crashing down.